I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Hot Pursuit.
All right, we have a very cool episode for you today.
Yeah.
Soon Hagerty.
Soon Hagerty, one half of the power duo behind Hagerty Inc., the company that went public in 2021 with a $3 billion valuation. You might actually have your car insured by Hagerty, but they also do a lot more. Especially if it's a classic.
Car.
Soon is SVP of brand strategy at Hagerty, but she also does a lot of other things that I think are really meaningful to her. And she's been in the car world for so long. I'm super excited to talk to her.
She started at JMPR, which, car journalists will all know well and remember, working with a lot, and then went to Lamborghini. Also at the beginning of what I think is kind of a cultural change, a shift for that brand.
Yeah, I think Soon is kind of a savant when it comes to helping brands pivot and really sort of gloss up in a way, because she just has so much personal beauty inside and out. And I think she is very, very good at helping brands be realistic about where they are and where they want to be.
Well, let's get straight into it.
I know that, you and I have spoken about your background, but I think probably our listeners would love to hear a little bit about how you got involved in cars, and also
and me.
And Matt, and how you came to the United States. I don't want to do the spoiler, but your family, you're from Vietnam. And I would just love to hear you tell Matt and our listeners, a little bit, because your background is not glamorous and you have really created a beautiful world, but also I think become the person that you really are in a real way. So that's kind of a long intro, but thanks for joining us and tell us a little bit about that journey for you.
Well, before I start, right back at you. You're pretty glamorous yourself in this very bro car world, and your shirt also, Matt, also very glamorous. So I think this is a good crew. What's interesting is I turn 50 next year, and I've probably not talked about like my background and story until the last 5. Till I really started doing more impact work and working with larger foundations, and to really talking about my story. And, when you're a kid, all you want to talk about and all you want to do is be like everybody else, right? But as you get older, you recognize, okay, your story is actually your identity. So I was born in Saigon, Vietnam. My dad was a history teacher in Vietnam, and he fought for the American side when communism was taking over the country. And after the fall of Saigon, for those who can remember this, my dad was asked to join a re-education camp. And as you can imagine, there's no education happening in those camps. And so just like thousands, if not millions of people in Vietnam who had to leave because they were going to be incarcerated in camps. So my dad and my family, we escaped in the middle of the night, and we were on a boat for 12 days. And we stayed in a refugee camp in Indonesia for 6 months. And then we came to the United States with $300 in our pocket, 6.5 kids in tow. And it was really interesting. And people will ask me, do you remember that? When you're 5, you kind of have visuals. I remember the boat. I remember these beautiful dolphins guiding our boat. It was like quite magical. Thank God I have PTSD and I don't remember the refugee camp, but I do remember landing in the United States and landing in San Francisco, and a vivid memory of we stayed at like a Motel 6 to get our papers, and my dad walking up the stairs, and he had 2 almost like Starbucks like coffee holders, but it had like cup of noodles. We're like, whoa, noodles, we're going back home. And it was interesting visuals.
What was drawing the family to California? Did you have other family members in the San Francisco area?
Yeah, great question. My uncle actually fought for the war as well. And he came over with an American soldier, and they saved he saved $500 a month for 4 years to save money for our paperwork. So my uncle sponsored us here.
I'm a little too young to remember all of that, except for what I learned in the history books, obviously. And they didn't really talk so much about our allies in Vietnam, but we've seen, unfortunately, after we pieced out of Afghanistan in a hurry, that a lot of people who we promised allegiance to in exchange for putting their lives on the line didn't really get what was owed them. Did your dad and your uncle fought for America? Did America in exchange allow them to come over, help them to get over, give them citizenship, give them any help getting started?
You know what? Absolutely. Like, we came here and there's this huge community that would take us in, right? Just like everything else, like churches or local neighbors. I think, the Vietnam War was a really tough time in the United States, and I think there were a lot of people who were against it. And so when they saw us as refugees, we were innocent people, right? We had nothing to do with communism. And I think Americans are great. We have a great American story. There's no other place in the world where you can come with 7 kids, $300 in your pocket, and be successful. And it's just, I think war is complex, but I think Americans in general have a huge heart and a great place to call home.
I'm really curious. You said that you hadn't really talked publicly about this part of your life until like 5 years ago. Was there something that prompted you to think, I really need to share this part of myself? Or was it just a gradual process?
Yeah, I think it was when I started to lead bigger teams and talk about leadership and talk about resilience that I started to like almost give self therapy when people would say, okay, you've gotten to where you are. This isn't generally your background. How did you get to lead, at Hagerty, a team of 70, right? How did you start your own business? I think it was really when I turned 30 and I started my first PR marketing firm. And I started just kind of getting my head together of when people ask, okay, you're 30 years old, you live in LA, you're this woman in this automotive field, how did you do this? And so I had to dig deep and say, where did I get this? And so giving younger people advice. So I think it was like this natural self-therapy evolution to explore like what makes you you. Because I don't, my background's PR, so I'm so used to putting the microphone in front of someone else. So it feels weird to talk about yourself. But I think through leadership and wanting to support others, I started to talk about my story.
I'm interested to know how you got involved in the car world as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like what was your first entrance into that, and how did it? I mean, obviously you were like, oh, I really like these things,
But also you had a cool car in high school. I feel like we've discussed this before too.
Oh my gosh, I think I had like a 1984 Celica with a sunroof, and it was like this like eggplant purple, and I thought I was like the coolest chick, and I realized
you were.
Everyone had the same car. It's quite funny. I still remember that car. Well, I always loved storytelling. Like, I think when you have an interesting story, and I think it's all subconscious, I didn't realize I had this interesting story. So I was always curious about other people. I would meet somebody who was successful or someone that was interesting, not necessarily successful financially, but just intriguing. And I would start to like question, tell me who you are, tell me what you do. And I think I was naturally curious. And so I wanted to be a broadcast reporter. So I thought, where can I do this? So I like packed my naive bags and I like moved to Los Angeles, and I just, started knocking on doors, and I started working for a network in LA. I was a field producer and assignment editor. And I think that's what honed my skills.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. I did that for about a year. And I realized it's a tough business, the media business. I wanted to be a reporter, and there was a bit of in the TV world a little shallowness to it. So I wasn't really sure.
Matt,
I wanted to.
Any comment?
Sorry, Matt.
No, it's true. It's true. I mean, I was a print reporter who then went to work for TV. So I was like betrayal to my print colleagues who thought, TV is basically the
just another pretty face.
Well, I mean, it really hit home one weekend. I was on the assignment desk, and this really pretty girl came in, and the current anchor said, "So who are you? You know, nice to meet you." Said, "Well, I'm the new weekend anchor." And she was the weekend anchor that asked her who she was. And so she,
Oh,
yeah,
no,
exactly.
no,
So I was like, this isn't for me. Like, you
no.
can't, that's not, I'm all for, attention and things that come with being a reporter, but I felt like that was pretty brutal. So I
That's
said,
brutal.
what else interests me in storytelling? And I thought, I think PR and communications, unraveling what makes people who they are, what makes products who they are. I just love great stories. And so again, started knocking on doors, and I found this agency, JMPR, and they're in the automotive and luxury space, and I fell in love. I worked there for 7 years as a vice president of client services, and that's when I first started to interact with the OEM world. And then I started my own agency, and the first client that said they wanted to come with me was Lamborghini. And that was just super fun. And I was basically internal there because they didn't have any people in the United States that did PR marketing. So I was one of the boys, let's say.
Yeah. Talk to me about that a little bit because we have that in common that you and I did not grow up in a car lifestyle at all. It's something that we sort of accidentally fell into and I think grew to like and really appreciate and excel at. But that was not the goal or the attraction. Talk to me about how that was like learning about cars and embracing this very weird world and the weird people in it, and God love them. But it's still neat. It's, at the end of the day, cars are niche.
Yeah, I think it's two parts. I think one, I fell into it, but it's not necessarily just the cars. I can't put a car, I can't take it apart and put it back together. But the people are interesting. They're not just weird, but they're super interesting. And some of them are so brilliant and successful. And that goes back to the storytelling. It's interesting, Hannah, because I remember working with you earlier in my career, and I was doing PR for Hagerty as well. And I said, okay, I want to introduce to Mikhail, my husband. I said, I want to introduce to Hannah. And the first thing he said to me after he interviewed with you is like, it was like you were brand new. He said, she may not know a lot about cars, but she's a great reporter.
Oh, that's
You know,
very
and
kind.
yeah, and I remember that distinctly. That's kind of how I think about myself. I'm not nuts and bolts, but I'm a good storyteller, and I love uncovering truths. And so I think it's, really interesting to work with all these different brands. I heard Stefan on your show. He's hilarious. He's my soul. He's so funny. He's taught me so much about life. And so it's not just the car world. Also, Carol Shelby was one of my clients for a long time.
Oh, interesting. I bet you've
Wow.
got stories.
One of my favorites, though, he is somebody who's just, you'll never find another person like him. To me, he really taught me of loyalty, of either when you're in, you're in. And if he liked you, he took care of you. He protected you. And so I've always had this like weird history with my clients. Either, they've always had these like huge personalities like Stefan and like
Hmm.
Carol. But if they
Hmm.
liked you, they took care of you. And when I started my first agency, CEO of Lamborghini, Stefan was the first person that said, I'm going with you. And I was this 30-year-old kid. So I'll always be grateful. So it's some amazing personalities in the car world.
So
But it strikes me that
tell me your,
it,
just real quick on that note, what is your strategy for dealing with the flip side of a person, that big personality, which is also a big ego? How do you manage and balance that?
You know what? You said it. I think when people can be irrational or demanding, it's all out of a fear of something. Ego is all about a fear of something. So what I try to do is I use stoicism to really like not react right away, right? I try to separate what happened with how I'm going to react. And so I think, okay, why did this person go off the handle? Or why is this person upset? Okay, what are they fearing? And so my background is psychology, my degrees in psychology. So I always try to take a breath and say, like, I'm going to uncover like why he just got absolutely off the rails for nothing. And that's kind of how I manage people. I use that in my day-to-day life with my very teen 12-year-old girl. And I know you have girls, Matt, wait until they get teens.
Yes.
I have to separate myself from what just happened.
I hope I can use. I actually would like to be able to use stoicism all the time. It's easier said than done. Like I read Marcus Aurelius, and I'm like,
Yes.
man, that's exactly right. But then when it comes to the heat of the moment, I get caught up in it.
Yeah, that's it happens. But you know what? It's changed my life. I'm rigid about meditation and stoicism.
I think that's quite cool. It strikes me, by the way, that when you started at Lamborghini and Winkleman as well, you kind of the car company changed from this sort of hairy chest, gold medallion, like brutal, thing to a more luxurious.
And that was just the women.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Winkleman also is a very like he's about the finer things in life, right? He
very elegant
has
man.
has a real sense of style, and I don't think Lamborghini had that sense of style before. What they've gone through now with Huracan and Aventador, and what they've gotten to now with Revuelto and whatever
Temerario.
the name Terrario. It seems like they've really grown up, and you were at the beginning of that journey, right?
Yeah, you know what? I think it really has to do with the vision, and I do credit Stefan for a lot of that. I mean, you know him well, Hannah. I mean, isn't he like built for this?
Yes.
He's built for the
Yes,
brand.
the prototypical.
Built for the brand.
Yes.
Oh, built for the brand, and I think he
Yes.
helped build the brand. But I've been in a lot of global strategy brands, meetings about like how we can kind of separate ourselves from the things that were, let's say, like cheesy about the brand to the things that were great. So you have, and the things that are great is, I never, when I worked with Lamborghini, never wanted to demean like the clients who were unapologetic about their success. So I think some of the bold colors like will always be in the DNA, but we also said, who are these new amazing buyers who are unapologetic about their success, but who want a little bit refinement? So I think like even when you went to like the auto shows, like you remember the beautiful gray stands, you remember the beautiful gray, white, black colors. All the executives were impeccably dressed.
Yes.
When Stefan took over, we like cleaned up the factory and made sure that everybody was in these black polos. So when people came to tour, it wasn't this cheesy, bad sight. So I think like attention to detail, I think matters. And that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I got really working with them is, not every detail matters, but details matter. Mm-hmm. And I think they did a beautiful job.
So it's interesting, Matt, you mentioned like soon was that sort of the beginning of a big shift for Lamborghini. And really, I mean, I think you in your role leading brand strategy at Hagerty was also really pivotal. And I know that you've graduated onto even bigger and more important, arguably, things, but you still are, advising Hagerty. Of course, we remember Hagerty went public in 2021 and to a really high valuation, I think maybe $3 billion or so. But you really have helped that brand, I think, transform from being sort of a humble, quiet insurance company to something much bigger. So can you tell us, like, obviously it's complicated because you're also married to the man in the family who started the company, but what did you see that when you were like really making decisions, you're like, all right, this is a parallel to, some things that I saw at Lamborghini that need to change, or maybe no parallels, I don't know. But did you use some of the same skills?
You got to say it's the biggest positive shift
in
automotive media in decades.
Huge.
Because everything else has died, right? Everything else has gone downhill and evaporated, whereas Hagerty has become something bigger, much bigger than it once was. So
yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. And I think there are parallels. I think, again, anytime I look at a brand strategy and I dissect what we need to be versus what we are, it's almost like this like left-right association link. What makes you great? I think Hagerty is still humble. I think Hagerty is still got this family mindset. And it's got this like very simple core passion. And I think you've probably heard Nikhil talk about it as well. People love to take care of their toys. And so we always honed in on that. What I thought could use some polishing is the way we represented who we are and what we do in terms of a more modern approach to the car world. I heard your recent show about the changing of the guards, right? Like, and a great brand knows, like, I've got to plan 10 years out for that. Mm-hmm. I think brands like, and we all know them, Kodak or Blockbuster, all the brands that go away, they're not thinking about the future. So I always thought, okay, like all of our look and feel can't just be about classic. It has to be like meaningful and modern. And the same thing, it's the same thing I think what Lamborghini, we cleaned up all of our brand. Like we created new logos, we created new visuals, we did lots of photo shoots with younger people of different diversities, women. So I think it's really important to be thinking out like, okay, how do you love your current base, but how do you build that on-ramp, excuse me for an automotive pun, but on-ramp to people, they want to have a refined experience. They want to be able to hang out with people their age. And so my goal was just to really modernize it and to make it a little bit more refined.
It also seems like there is or was this giant hole. You mentioned diversity, right? I remember sitting down with, what's the guy's name who used to own Gawker Media? Anyway, he was like, we should do a car site for people of color, Mm-hmm. And it didn't strike me that was a huge unserved audience, women as well. I mean, there just still isn't really that much out there that's specifically aimed at a more diverse group. So it seems like low-hanging fruit that no one's grabbing.
Yeah, and when I mean diversity, not just in gender or color, also age, right? I think that's really important. And I study a lot of brands. I've listened to lots of podcasts, and I think about like what Harley went through, right? They had an aging out issue, and I remember listening
really bad.
And paying that exactly. With I think it was their V-Rod, where they really put together in terms of trying to get their next generation. But
just hearing the name V-Rod makes me kind of shake a little bit. I don't know about that thing.
But I paid attention to all of that. I paid attention to like, how are we thinking about the next 10 years and the next, millions of customers that are going to be ready to think about driving these classic cars? What do they like? What do they need? And we have to be in front of that.
What are you seeing now, Soon, in terms of I don't know, the EV landscape, but then also maybe EVs are slowing down? What are you seeing for the next opportunities for Hagerty as we move forward, just in the broader context of the car world?
Well, I think, I've been paying a lot of attention to the EV versus hybrid conversation. I think for Hagerty, we have to be very thoughtful about all of that, because the majority of our clients are, internal combustion, very focused on driving. So what we talked about is really about not let the customer decide what type of car they want to drive. We have to get them in a position where they come together as a community and they drive together. So Hagerty's really focused on bringing people together. We own 7 events. We go to about 2,000 a year in some way.
Wow.
So for Hagerty, it's bringing together this community of car people, because I think, driving a car on a Sunday to get ice cream by yourself is amazing, but going to a car show and seeing your friends is kind of what makes this community what it is.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the EV train seems unstoppable and inevitable, but there's been such a huge backlash that I guess you just need some kind of bridge between gas and EVs. And, Lamborghini has embraced hybrid, especially after Pebble, what they showed there. And clearly Winkleman really wants to squeeze every ounce of performance out of hybrids that he can before he goes to EVs.
Yeah, we have it all. We have a Taycan. We, have many, internal combustion vehicles, classic cars. We have a ton of fun. I think there's room for it all. I think it's about preference and trying to be as thoughtful as possible. And
Soon, what are your favorites? I mean, you had the Celica.
wait, Matt, how do you know how do you know I still don't have it?
Good point. Did you keep it?
Well, we're a Porsche family, so my day-to-day like usable cars, I drive a Range Rover Sport, but my favorite summer car that I've been driving this year is a 62 356 twin grill Roadster.
Wow.
Ooh.
That is cool.
Wow.
Anna, you look so cute in this. It's
Whoa.
white and interior. So that's my favorite car that I've been driving.
I
Oh,
saw
I love
I
that.
saw Stephen Harris driving, by the way.
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Soon, what's the best car event you've been to in the past year? And you can say your own, obviously, or others too. I mean, are you guys go to so many? And of course, we just came from Monterey, and there's a million things going on there. But like, do any stick out in your mind that you just thought were really well done or especially meaningful?
Well, I mean, the three come to mind. One I haven't been to in a couple of years, but I think you'll appreciate it is the Goodwood Revival.
Oh,
I think that, to me, like the best car show in the world.
everybody
And
said
so-
that. Everybody.
Oh my gosh. And if you want to talk about attention to detail, Lord March, I mean, literally, it's, set back in time. And even the grass during that time period is thought of. The
Wow.
trash, people who take out the trash, thought of. So attention to detail and genre. The best event that I would say that I've been to that we don't do is the Villa d'Este Concours in Como. The backdrop's amazing. But this experience is attention to detail. It's the best cars in the world, and it's just idyllic. And then I would say we took over the California Melee, and I think this year we killed it. And the team worked really, really hard, and we just elevated it. And this idea that people won't pay a lot to go to a car, or the car world is not vibrant anymore, we increased the price by several thousand, and every single person said is the best driving event in the US because you were bold enough to increase the price and to elevate the experience. So, it's 4 or 5 star hotels, high-end dining. It's just a gorgeous road. So I would say the California Melee was my favorite event. And then, of course, Villa d'Este.
That is really a great point because it does seem like a lot of car events give matters of food and hospitality. It's a bit of an afterthought. And so I'm not surprised that even though you did raise prices, if people understood this is the reason why, that you're going to get so much more out of it and on such a more elevated platform, that they would feel it's worth it.
Well, I mean, when I think about this and we thought about, okay, do we want a better experience? We want people to say this is the best driving event I've ever been to in the United States. I thought
that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. What needs to happen? It needs to be the best hotels. It needs to be exclusive experiences like going to Stephen Harris's house. That was incredible. Jonathan Siegel's place in Southern California. But also like the quality of the food and the experience. To me, it's really honestly about a sense of respect for the people who come. You're giving up 5 days of your life away from your family, away from work to spend with us. I want this to be meaningful for every minute. So it's not about raising prices. It's about raising the experience because I'm grateful that you're going to spend 5 days with me. It's kind of like hosting somebody in your house, right? Do you want to give them a subpar experience or do you want to do the best possible experience you can do?
Yeah.
Prices are going up everywhere you look. You said you're a Porsche family. I'm wondering what you think about the direction Porsche is heading in right now. I mean, you have a Taycan, so obviously you appreciate their EV experience. But it's like every time I look at the website and configure a car, I'm just flabbergasted by how much they're able to increase prices and get what they ask.
Well, you know what? They're brand people. And I know I'm a brand person too, and maybe I'm just biased, but every single leader I meet at Porsche truly understands the intimate details of the personalization. Every event I go to, those leaders are really thinking about like that internal experience in somebody's head when they say, I can buy this car or I can buy this car. And what does it say about me? So I think they're a fantastic company. I think, Aisha, who's a good friend of mine who runs marketing, she
Powerful
really
woman.
powerful woman,
Yeah.
totally gets it, totally
Yep.
understands like what that customer base needs, and it's one of my favorite brands.
I think about maybe 10 or 15 years ago, a lot of brands started recognizing that they do need to have more women in leadership, and be catering to women, especially the automotive OEMs, right? They realize, oh,
Yes.
more than 50% of the people making decisions to buy cars are female. And so even if, you know, uh, Jack is going to buy this 911, it has to get approved by Sally first, and actually with that recognition, Porsche started building a much better product. Lamborghini started building something that maybe women wouldn't be embarrassed. Well, maybe they still would be embarrassed, but you know what I'm saying? Like maybe that is what really improved quality of these brands.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a business standpoint, this is going to sound very simple. 50% of the people on earth are women. So why would you ignore that data? That's purchasing
Yeah.
power, that's influence, that is a lot of amazing taste and style. And I think if you can get women involved, not only in like the purchasing aspect, but the design aspect, the production, I think that your business is only going to be stronger. This whole, I don't know if it's backlash, but backlash against DEI and over the last couple of years makes no sense to me, because to me it's just the data. If women are 50% of your purchasing power, why would you not pay attention to that? That's, to me, it's just one, I think it's the right thing to do from an equality standpoint, but more importantly, not more importantly, just as important, it's good business. So it's never
Yeah.
made sense to me why people wouldn't pay attention to that.
And I have to say, cars are still woefully behind in terms of
Yeah.
having any real diversity across multiple things: age, race, gender, just like you said, Soon. And I know this is kind of a perfect segue, because I know that you're now. I feel like you're doing so many things outside of the car world to help support and promote women and people from all sorts of backgrounds. You founded the Boundless Futures Foundation, and you do also have a restaurant. Are you currently still running your restaurant in Detroit?
Well, Hannah, yes, unfortunately, I own a restaurant.
Okay, so this is a
Like
whole
what?
other side of you.
Well, when I'm at the restaurant, people will say, "Are you the owner?" And I say, "Unfortunately, yes." But but that restaurant also has a little bit more meaning than just a restaurant. It's called the Good Bowl. It's a Vietnamese restaurant, really my background, and we donate $1 per bowl to charity. That's why we call it the Good Bowl. It's my way of thanking the U.S. for taking us in as refugees and immigrants. So it's been
Wow.
6 years. So we donated $170,000 to charity, so about 30,000 a year. But also, Mikhail and I launched the Boundless Futures Foundation last September. And what we do is we help female founders who want to launch their own business. The caveat, or maybe not the caveat, but the nuance is these businesses have to help solve a social issue. So either your product solves a social issue like the environment, or you give away money to solve a social issue. And so my restaurant is a good example. We donate $1 per bowl to charity, to nonprofits. So it's been really, really fun to be able to do that. And I've been able to leverage everything I've learned in the automotive world, working at Hagerty, to help build brands for both the restaurant and the foundation. And I
I
don't
have to.
recommend owning a restaurant. For anyone who owns a restaurant, call me. We can talk about this. We can start our own support group.
I have to. I don't know if you know Jessie Draper, who is a VC. She started the Halogen VC fund, and they also only do female founders.
Yeah.
And it's mostly like family focused tech businesses. But you should get together with her. In terms of Detroit, what's your take on Detroit? Because it's a place I really, really love, but it isn't. It doesn't feel very sophisticated. I go there because it's like just dudes talking about cars all day long.
No, Detroit is like Paris in a way. I'm not. I'm not being funny.
I was just in Paris. It was really fun.
Did you go to the Olympics?
No, I just missed it. I spent 2 weeks with my family in France. We went to Paris, Saint-Tropez, Antibes, and Monaco. So that was amazing. Really, really fun. Matt, to your question, I live about 4.5 hours north of Detroit in a resort town. It's fabulous. I love it. But you know how certain cities have personalities? I don't think Detroit needs to be sophisticated because it has its own thing. I think it's innovative. I think it's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of soul, and it's had a huge influence in our history. And I think that's all it needs. It doesn't need to be elegant. It doesn't need to be sophisticated. But I think it's really coming up. And I'll have to admit, like 5 years ago, before I really started going to Detroit a lot because of the Detroit Concours that we used to put on, I was like hesitant because, of course, you'd hear all these stories and you kind of have this reputation. But I've started to fall in love with it because I think it's like this underdog. And, I always root for underdogs. So I don't know. I think it's pretty cool.
It does have that.
Detroit is very cool. I'm a
John Varvatos, Ralph Gio.
Yeah. I met John Varvatos. I love him. He's awesome. It's great.
I'm not surprised. Well, Soon, thank you so much for your time. It's really been a treat to talk to you and just get to understand more how your mind works. What do you have coming up that we should know about? Anything other than not struggling, but doing the restaurant, struggling with your daughter, your 12-year-old, and everything else?
Well, she's definitely a teen, so I have a lot of wine coming up, that's for sure. Just really tapping into like what my platform is to think about how to help female founders. I'm still staying involved in the car world. I'm part of the Hagerty Drivers Foundation board. So my goal is to kind of straddle both worlds of the things that I'm passionate about as female founders, but the things that I think are fun. I think the car world's fun. And I think I never want to lose touch with all of you guys in the amazing car world. And, with the foundation, my goal is to figure out how to keep the car world alive and growing and passionate. And as Matt would like, sophisticated. So that's my goal.
You got to get your 12-year-old daughter. I mean, is she interested in cars? Have you?
Oh my gosh, very much, very much. I don't know if she's interested or maybe it's been beaten into her, but I heard you were talking about how long you've been going to Monterey, Hannah. I've been going for 20 years, and I've only missed it twice in 20 years. The year she was born. And just this last one because she had a equestrian competition. But her birthday is the year of Pebble Beach. So every year we celebrated at the lodge, pretty much. Poor girl.
Yeah, that'll be good memories for her when she gets older, even if she gets tired of it now.
That sounds fantastic to me.
I know. The lodge is not a bad way to blow out a
it's
cake,
not a bad way. No,
Stillwater's
she'll value it.
it.
Well, I have to ask, how was it not going this year? Was it actually a relief in a way, or did you really miss it or mix?
It was brutal.
Really?
I enjoyed my time with my daughter, but I know this is gonna sound terrible, but probably got like 20 texts from people.
Yeah.
Of like, oh my gosh, we miss you, and my friends, and I just I don't know. There's always next year, but it was great. Sometimes when you don't know how much you care about something until it's
Hmm.
taken away from you or you don't
Hmm.
have it. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss it. So I can't wait for next year.
She didn't go to Pebble, and I've never been, and I really want to go, but I've heard from you about it, and then I've been hearing a lot of other people tell stories about. I don't understand the idea that there's some sort of joy in bumper to bumper traffic. Like
Yeah.
Zach from the Smoking Tire was like, "Oh, it's the greatest traffic jam I've ever been in."
No.
But like, why? Why
I
would that
mean,
be cool?
look, if you really want to get into it, I have some critiques about it. And of course, the traffic is one. I also am a little uncomfortable, to be honest, with just the sort of orgiastic display of wealth at some of
I heard the
the
tickets to the Quail
events.
were $3,000.
Yeah, that's honestly, that does feel a little uncomfortable. And it's at the cost of like basic necessities, when it's difficult to find water, or a toilet. And I'm not saying that it's specific to the Quail. I'm talking more in general, but it it's not all wonderful. And of course, no one is going to complain. It's a premier event. It's really a privilege to be there. But it's not all perfect. I would say this year in particular, for instance, the security was extremely heavy-handed. In terms of singling people out to check their badges and passes for no reason, which I saw a number of times, which seemed unfair.
Like
And
a stop and frisk kind of policy.
almost.
Quail.
Yeah, it did not at Quail. This was on in Carmel. So all that to say, it's not all perfect, and there's a fine line between certainly not complaining about being there, but I would say to your point that it's at the end of the day, a lot of these events, Formula One races are notorious. The logistics are very difficult. It's not all
Right.
great. Sometimes you are better off just observing from the comfort of your couch. So,
Well, there is also on the one hand, we appreciate like these incredible feats of engineering and design and even the brand. I appreciate a lot of these brands, which is
yes.
kind of a weird thing to care about, but I do.
Yeah,
On the
well,
other
you're wearing a
hand,
Bugatti
this one,
hat right now. I can see it.
true.
I can
That's
see the
true.
appreciation. Yes.
Well, and then on the other hand, there's this like gauche display of wealth that's a
Yeah.
little bit stupid. Like
Yeah.
I love uh, Lamborghini Aventador because it's so brutal. The way it looks, the way it shifts is ridiculous. It's loud. But on the other hand, it's so stupid that people are going to be paying like five, 600, $700,000
Well,
for these vehicles.
I would, for me, I would never call somebody's decision stupid because for them it represents really an achievement or a reward or it's something meaningful. So I don't ever
No,
want
I
to
wouldn't call a person. No, I
detract
agree. I wouldn't call a
from
person's
that.
individual decision stupid, and I probably would buy. I definitely would buy an Aventador if I could justify it
Certainly,
financially. I meant the
certainly.
idea that we
Hmm.
are paying this
Yeah.
much, so that we talk about, the cars that debuted their new Bugatti. That how many $1 million does that cost? Or
Hmm.
a Koenigsegg, or even the McLarens. Like the prices are just ridiculous.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I guess, and the reason they're ridiculous is because very few people can actually afford. So many of us, love these cars and would, die to be at the Quail just to see and
Yes.
maybe even fit in, or hear these cars. But very few of us are ever going to be able to afford one.
Yes.
I guess that's true of a lot of art in a way,
Yeah.
but
I think it's very nice to be able to appreciate beautiful things, and that doesn't mean you have to own them in order to appreciate them. To your point, it's really wonderful that the people who do own those beautiful vehicles share them and
True.
let people see them and experience them and hear them. That's a really wonderful way to use your possessions in a way that can bring joy to other people. And I really celebrate that. And I also think, look, you can be sort of enslaved by your possessions, whether that possession is a $50,000 BMW or a $5 million Bugatti. It's down to how the person values and treats their possessions. And, I certainly have seen wealthy people who are sort of controlled by their wealth and who are sort of enslaved by the things that they have, and others who are extremely generous and who are really just living lives that are abundant in a bigger way.
No, it's true. It's a good point. And I think the comparison to art is apt because, I could understand someone who would die to see a Monet or a Degas or whatever, and obviously most people aren't going to be able to afford a Monet or a Degas, but fortunately there are people who can and then put them on display.
Yes.
I always, lately I've been thinking a lot about that guy who owns all those purple Porsches, and they were all lined up on a street in New York. And me and a ton of other kids were just walking around them, looking at them, taking pictures, and it didn't matter that we weren't going to be owning all those purple Porsches, but it was just amazing to see them all lined up.
It's really fun to celebrate the achievements of humans and the achievements of artists and engineers really working at the pinnacle of their fields. And a lot of the most expensive cars represent that, It's really interesting when you talk to the people who work at companies like Rolls-Royce, for instance. I don't know if I've ever met more humble tradesmen and craftspeople, and they think of themselves as very proud to be working for such a prestigious and well-respected brand, and they think of themselves as tradespeople. And it's wonderful for them to be able to have a career that supports their skill. And the car is the result of that. And I certainly celebrate that for sure.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So you look tan.
Yeah, I've been in Spain. I'm here for the week, which is fun. It's always a bummer to be in a European country that's not Germany when you're driving because they're serious about the speed limit. So I don't know how many speeding tickets I've gotten already. And you never find out until weeks after you get home because, they blitz you. And so,
now this is where they have the cameras, like a camera at point A, a camera at point B, and they take your average speed between the two, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and you can kind of game it if you're really careful.
You could, but so I'm south of Valencia, and there is a little road that goes through these marshes where they grow all the rice, the Albufera, and it's only one lane, so on each side, so you can't pass, and they do measure you, as you enter and then as you exit and average your speed. But I can't stick to it's like 60 kilometers an hour, which is ridiculous.
Are you on a motorcycle or in a car?
So the car, because I have a family truckster for the kids, that's a little easier. But one of my motorcycles from Germany that I couldn't ship back home because I bought it here. I have it down here, so it's the only time I get to ride my favorite of all time motorcycles, the Ducati Multistrada, the 1200 Pikes Peak version. So I'm just ringing it out, every place I go. And in fact, I got completely lost and I ended up in rice fields. And since it's the Multistrada, I don't feel at all bad about taking it off road. So I spent an hour trying to find my way out of these rice fields, and it's so much fun.
That is so cool. It sounds like a movie.
It's Spain is a great place to ride motorcycles because so many people here ride motorcycles that I'm more comfortable about, cars are watching for me and actually, and the roads are fantastic, even though the speed limits are low. Fine. But what are you up to after you've gotten back from the big Monterey Car Week and back in LA?
I have been frequenting, I'm sort of a massage junkie, and I have been frequenting cheap massage parlors throughout Los Angeles, because what I find is that the more expensive the massage, typically the worse it is. So this week I've been working the Sunset Strip, looking for good spots. I prefer like a traditional sort of Chinese, very strong massage. And of course, New York's Chinatown is full of them, and I have my special spots there, but I haven't found any in LA yet. So this has been a quest. So I've been doing that a lot.
Wow.
Car related. I actually this week have been driving the CLE 450. It's that little Mercedes convertible, which is it's fine. You know, it's a little bit forgettable. In fact, the other day when I was leaving the office, I walked right past it in the parking garage, and I was like, did someone steal the car? And I realized I had walked right past it. So
450,
yeah,
I'm guessing 450 means it has the inline six.
yeah, I
which
think
isn't really
so.
what I like.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been interesting. And then, you know, I've been thinking a ton about Restomods, because I just did that piece on this sort of, they've been around for a while, but this real upswell in like European brands that have been Restomodded. Of course, we're talking about Porsches, but also Lamborghinis, Jaguars, even BMWs, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, there's no end to the Porsche Resto mods. Like,
I
not
know.
only Singer was talked about a lot and I'm going to go to a Singer event in New York next week, so I'm pretty excited
Cool.
about that.
Good.
But I guess Tuttle had like an amazing Porsche
Yeah. Yeah.
pack.
Yeah. This is all coming. This is all coming again off of Monterey Car Week, where apparently everything happened. Tuttle
Gunther
debuted.
Work had some
Yeah.
stuff there, and
Yeah, Tuttle had a GT1 that they debuted based off, 1990s Le Mans race cars. Gunther Works, I don't know if they had a debut, but they certainly had a very strong sale at auction, as did several Singers, several Roofs, which you could argue aren't really resto mods anymore, but it's like this crazy upswell. They seem to be everywhere.
yeah, Roof, I guess, would have been a tuner and then something
Well,
more.
a modifier, and then now, their latest, the Roof Rodeo or Rodeo, take your pick, that they debuted in Monterey is 100% Roof components, parts developed. There are actually no factory Porsche parts involved in that car. So they've kind of evolved through the doors of perception, and they're on the other side now.
By the way, does the
making their own
daughter
thing.
run that place now?
No, but she's I think she's certainly making waves and is really being I don't want to say groomed, but she's really becoming the face of the company for a new generation. Her parents are really wonderful people who have been around for a long time, but she is really a fresh young face, and she's really a lovely person who I think carries the mantle
Yeah.
well. So, yeah.
One of my favorite episodes of OPP, I was going to say, although
Oh, yeah.
there's so many that I like of that show.
It's a good show.
Cool. So, yes, Resto Mod. And I'm continue to try desperately to get you to drive one of these Revology Mustangs.
They need to be paying you a PR fee, Matt, because you're doing.
They
you're
really
doing.
need better PR. They need better PR. So I just happen to be friends with a guy who works at Nighthead, which, owns them. So, but I've never seen one in person either. I just am obsessed with the idea that there could possibly be a high quality reproduction of, the Mustang, because I don't want to buy an old one since they're like dangerous and probably would feel disappointing to drive compared to a modern car. So to me, the idea is like peanut butter and chocolate, like perfect, but I don't know if it's going to really be.
When do you come back from Spain?
I'm coming back on Sunday, and I like to have a buffer day between
Yeah.
vacation and work.
Yeah.
So we've got the whatever holiday it is, Labor Day. It's Labor
Yeah.
Day, right?
Yeah.
And
who's covering for you on your TV show?
I don't have to. The beauty of a 3-anchor show, probably the only benefit of a 3-anchor show, because a little inside baseball, in TV, everyone knows that a 3-anchor show is a horrible idea. But there are so many people that you have to have 3 anchors on a lot of shows. So, but the beauty of it is I can just leave, and Katie and Shonali get to do it without me. And it's probably a much better show. Not because I'm gone, but because there are only 2 anchors, which is, better.
Do you guys talk amongst yourselves ahead of time about who's going to take the lead on certain interviews? I'm just curious.
Only on really high-profile stuff. And, Shonali Bass, to her credit, books these amazing, Wall Street gods. So if she's done the legwork, I want her to lead off the interview. And then there's some things where, I'm booking a guy who runs a big software company, and he just wants to do a one-on-one. So maybe I'll do it, just with him. But I would talk to my co-anchors about it first, because we're a team, and usually, we're not greedy. We're not I'm sure we're egotistical, but we're not maniacs. So we're pretty civil with each other. We're all friends.
Good. That's good. Great.
Yes. I've tried not to force too many car guests on them. We've only had a few.
Do they care about cars at all?
Shonali does. She's a new huge fan of. She just got a sweet BMW.
Cool.
And actually, Katie, I don't know if I should be talking about this, but yeah. So Katie has a Genesis GV70, which everybody loves this vehicle.
Yes.
And she also does. So
great.
All right, cool. Well, I guess that's all we have time for this week. I look forward to seeing you stateside next week.
Yeah, I can't wait. And everyone listening, please email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net.
Oh, we've got some really good emails, actually. Have you seen?
Yes.
We got an email from a person trying to make, I think, a pretty difficult decision, who already has a pretty awesome weekend car, looking for a daily driver in the I range of BMWs. And I feel like BMW does it right. So if you want an EV, i4, i5, iX, these are, I think, pretty fun vehicles for EVs.
Yeah, keep it in the family.
And then that emailer said that they're going to take a trip to Berlin, which I was excited about, because I was like, oh, really? You've got to go see the Boros Gallery. You've got to go eat at Katz Orange. You've got to go see the Baumfad, whatever they call that tree thing over. Anyway, there's a million tips that I emailed. So, yes, email me.
Did you really? You emailed tips? Berlin tips.
Oh, yeah.
Straight from Matt Miller. That's, I've never been to Berlin. I've been to so many other German cities.
Are you serious?
I've been everywhere else, in literally every other German city, but I've never been to Berlin.
Well, you have to go. I mean, if you like, especially BMW motorcycles, they make them there.
Yeah, I think I would actually like Berlin the best out of any German city. It's
a great motorcycling city, and the BMW R9T is the perfect bike for that city. But the restaurants are amazing. The Boros Gallery is this modern art gallery that's in a World War II bunker in East Berlin. And amazing, but you have to get tickets months in advance because they only let 20 people in every day.
Oh, that's cool.
I could go on and on and on. Great city.
I can't put
all
it
right.
on the
Well,
list.
yes. So email us at hotpursuit@bloomberg.net. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Hannah Elliott, and this is Bloomberg.